This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Hello, my name is Chamon Dabeng and you're welcome to Business Highlights on Trust TV. On the show, we take you through some of the biggest developments in the business world and major economic policies and how they affect the average Nigerian out there. Today on the show, our focus has been once again brought to the NAIRA redesign policy that has caused quite a stir within the nation. We'll get into that right after the break.
That's great. This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
You're welcome back to the show. Now, President Muhammadu Buhari on Thursday made a national broadcast announcing that the old 1,000 and 500 Naira notes were no longer legal tenders, and the old 200 Naira notes is to coexist alongside the new 200 Naira note for a period of 60 days. Now, this comes after the Supreme Court released a court order stating that the old Naira notes would remain legal tenders pending a hearing on the 15th of February. However, the hearing once again was adjourned till the 22nd of February. Now, the suit was to prevent the CBN from fully implementing the NAIRA redesign policy. Considering the fact that the president's broadcast came just a week before the hearing by the Supreme Court, this has risen several questions of the legality of the actions by the president as well as the Central Bank of Nigeria. With only the old 200 Naira notes allowed to coexist alongside the new 1,000, 500 and 200 Naira notes, placing its deadline at April 10th, what are the economic implications the country may face? To take a holistic look at this, I am joined in the studio today by legal practitioner and senior advocate of Nigeria, Sam Kagbo, as well as economist, Professor Uche Uwaleke. You're both welcome to the show.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
Before we get into the crux of the matter, I would really like to know what your stance is on the policy. So far, there have been a lot of mixed reactions since the redesign policy actually came out. Now, I would like to know, based on your expert opinions, what you think of this policy. Let me start off with you, Mr. Kambo.
Well, let me say, like every Nigerian, I do not think that the policy is in itself out of place, but I think the notice or the time within which it's implemented is too short and falls short of the expectation of the law.
All right, Professor. Okay.
Well, I think the preponderance of opinion is that the policy is a good one. It has some objectives that is intended to achieve, one of which is to reduce the volume of money circulating outside the banking system, because that is making difficult the function of central bank's function of monetary policy. It's also meant to take out, as it were, old and mutilated notes, issues around terrorism financing, and so on and so forth. So I think overall the policy is a good one, but again, as has been expressed, my reservation with the policy has to do with the time the central bank actually started releasing the new notes. That was it didn't happen until sometime late in December, and the cash swap program again didn't start until January 23rd, which necessitated the extension of the deadline from January 31st to February 10th. So overall, I think is a good one, although it's leaving us with some outcomes, of course, some negative and some positive.
It seems to be that, you know, time is the main issue for most people. The time that they were given to exchange the old NAIRA notes, the time they were given to do this or do that, it just seems to be the major issue with a lot of people out there. Now, for those of you who actually missed the broadcast by President Muhammadu Buhari, we're going to be showing you the broadcast as well as some of the reactions that have come from Nigerians since the broadcast was out there. Let's take a look.
President Muhammadu Buhari, in his broadcast, acknowledged the fact that the matter is before the law courts and pronouncement made, and that his administration respects the rule of law.
I have given approval to the CBN that the old 200 Naira banknotes be released back into circulation, and that it should also be allowed to circulate as legal tender with the new 200 Naira, 500 Naira, and 1,000 Naira banknotes for 60 days from February 10th, 2023 to April 10th, 2023, when the old 200 Naira notes ceases to be legal tender.
However, a lawyer said what the president did amount to contravention of an order of the Supreme Court.
My own view is that President Muhammadu Buhari has contravened the position of the Supreme Court of Nigeria. And I think because of his immunity, the Supreme Court should go against the Attorney General of the Federation and cite him for contempt and ask the question why they should not be cited or taken to prison for contempt because of the flouting of that order by the Supreme Court of Nigeria.
Some Abuja residents expressed mixed feelings on the pronouncement.
Old, new, it's not our problem now. But since that's the way he wants it, I don't have any problem. Let just everything continue flowing.
200 Naira can be used for last 60 days. I think I like that.
The main take home is that the 200 Naira will be in circulation or will be accepted for another 60 days period. And I think that's good. It will alleviate the problem, the situation at hand.
Our advice to the government is that whenever you want to do something, even in your family, you need to prepare. Step 1, step 2.
It's uncalled for. President just want to suffer Nigeria. He want to suffer us because what of our people in the village? I want to send something to my people now. This Naira now to buy 5,000. You 3,000 buy 5,000 in Nigeria now. That's what I do this morning.
I want to appeal to everyone that let's be calm. There's nothing that has beginning that does not have an end. All these protests, destruction here and there should be stopped. Most of we are approaching election. All we advise everybody is that hold your PVC.
The resident, however, appealed to the federal government to act fast to ease the sufferings of the people by making the banknotes available.
All right, there you have it, reactions of our fellow Nigerians out there. Now, I'm coming to you, Doctor. Now, we want to really take a look at this issue of the legality behind it. There are a lot of questions. People are saying, oh, of course, like we just heard from a fellow lawyer, that the president has gone against the Supreme Court. Now, what do you make of this? How legal are these actions? Now, we've had the CBN itself say that, oh, we're not doing anything that's constitutionally out of our power. But then there are also other aspects that can come into play as far as the Supreme Court's jurisdiction in handling matters like this.
You see, the problem we have here is that most of the narrative we have there is not a legal narrative. Basically, we've all overnight become commentators. Basically, overnight we become judges or justices. We make absolute conclusions. I would want to refrain from that and would want to talk as an analyst as to what the law says and leave you to make your own judgment. This is the issue. You know, what constitutes the legal tender is a sovereign power. It's not a power that can be given to any other institution except the person who personifies the sovereign authority of the people, of the state, and that is the president. The president is the person who is vested with all the executive powers of the federation, and he personifies the sovereignty of the people, and that is why alternatively, instead of calling him at Mr. President. In some other literature or some other time, they call him the sovereign of the state. That is his own power. But the law, he can, with that power, say we can go back to Cowrie and make cowries as our legal tender. He has that right. It's an absolute discretion that is given to him by the law. But the law also envisages the consequences of implementing that power or exercising that power. And it now says, when you decide to exercise that power, you should give adequate notice. Adequate notice for us lawyers within the context has to be defined within the environment of the policy itself. And most of the times too, for us lawyers, we say we don't reinvent the wheel. We live on precedent. And if we don't have the precedent within the municipality, that is within the country, we look at what others have done. We borrow a leaf from there so that we do not go too far in our own adventurism. Now, you say you want to withdraw currencies, some notes, out of circulation and replace them with a redesigned one. Two issues are involved here: the designing and the declaration of the old notes being no longer of legal tender. That is, they are no longer means of settling debt. They are no longer means by which you exchange goods and services. It's different from the design and the printing. The design and the printing, that is the powers of the CBN. But declaring that this is no longer legal tender, this is the new legal tender, is that of Mr. President, and that is why the law says the central bank can only do that when it has a directive from Mr. President to do so. And
which the central bank has.
The central bank, yes. It has to give it the directive. So the initiator is Mr. President. The policy is that of Mr. President, not that of the central bank. So let's put the central bank out of the equation. Now, you give a 3-month, is it a 3-month period? And within that 3 months, even from your own showing, you know that you were not prepared for the implementation. You understand? And let me just cut it short. By the fact that, by your own admission, you now say, okay, let's release and recertify the old 200 Naira notes. It's an admission that you know that you have not, you understand, the implementation does not meet the yearnings of the people. And if from what I heard is true, you are mopping from the system. The old, you say there are about 3 trillion, 3-point-something trillion old currencies in circulation. And you print and make available for the exchange only 300 billion.
All right.
You understand? No, let me come to the issue.
Okay.
This is the background. So this is the issue that has gone before the Supreme Court to say the policy implementation is short. Is short of the requirement of the law because that period is too short. That is a dispute. Irrespective of other consideration, let's assume that the people who took that dispute to the Supreme Court don't have the locus, don't have business with that dispute. Let us assume that that dispute is frivolous. But the law says for every dispute, except for those that are picked and given to specific courts, for every dispute, the authority over that dispute, the absolute or the sovereign authority over that dispute is the court. And this time around, the case is before the Supreme Court. As long as that matter is before the Supreme Court, you don't even need an order asking you to stop.
you are bound not to do anything that would tamper with that dispute in any form or manner.
So basically things have to stay status quo.
That's what the rule of law envisages.
All right,
because if we don't do that, we now allow ourselves to pick and choose what to obey in others, then we're in trouble.
All right, so let's bring in the economic perspective of everything that has been going on. So far, we've seen the prices of grains crash. There have been a few other perishables that have had to crash due to this NAIRA scarcity. Now, of course, for some Nigerians out there, they'll be like, oh, great, I don't have to buy soybeans at 30,000. It's now 18,000 due to this. But is this really a good thing? Is this a bad thing disguised as a good thing?
Yes, Chairman, just before that, let me say the interesting thing about all this is that even among lawyers, you have divergent opinions. Just the same way you have divergent opinions among economists. Because I've also listened to some other opinion of some other lawyers who also think that the CBN, has not really violated any order, by the Supreme Court. These people also feel, and I also think that the government must have taken some legal opinion, legal advice before asking the president to go and make that, broadcast, in which he reiterated the fact that the deadline was February 10. Now, on the economic front, of course, there's no gainsaying the fact that it has really taken a huge toll on the economy. As we speak, of course, I'm sure you're feeling it. Economic activities are, quite at a very low ebb. Economic activities are contracting. And that was why the Nigerian Governors Forum hinted that the way it is, that we may even end up having a recession in the economy because of the level of contraction. A lot of businesses, small businesses, for example, are recording low sales. And for some others, inventory is piling because for an economy that is cash-based, huge informal economy, the demand has reduced because of the cash crunch. And what has happened is that as I said, sales are reducing, inventory is piling up, and there's no capacity utilization. But of course, I must also point out that
all right, before you get into that next point, we do have to go on a short break, and when we get back, you'll finish up on that point. Don't go anywhere.
This is Trust TV, documenting the Nigerian story. This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
You're welcome back to Business Highlights on Trust TV. My name is Chamo Dabeng, and I'm still here with legal practitioner and senior advocate of Nigeria, Dr. Sam Kagbo, as well as economist Professor Uche Waleke. And we're taking a look at the economic implications of what is going on right now in regards to the NAIRA scarcity issues. So far, the president has announced that only the 200 NAIRA notes, which is the old 200 NAIRA notes, retains its validity for the next 60 days. That's up until April 10th. What happens during that period? What happens after the deadline actually elapses? Now, Professor Uche, you were trying to make a point before we went on.
I was talking about the impact on growth. For now, of course, it's likely to be negative. If you also look at inflation, you saw what happened in January. Inflation, climbed to 21.82%, and that's also that may be partly as a result of what we are currently experiencing. The price of things going up simply because the value of a commodity is now being determined in terms of whether you're paying cash or you're doing a transfer. But Chamong, you see, there is also a flip side, you know, a positive upside to all of this. If you notice, for some time now, we've had less of kidnapping and ransom payments. And for some time too, I'm sure if you go around on weekends, you really find people now spraying, you know, the Naira notes. If you also visit any of these corners where they exchange, you know, Naira for the dollar, talking about the parallel markets, the pressure there has also reduced because people no longer have cash to do that. And more importantly, you can also say that there's a surge now in electronic payments. Financial inclusion to that extent, you know, must have been enhanced. So the point I'm making is that yes, we are having this economic challenges, but I also think that these challenges are going to be short term because in the medium to long term, I'm sure the impact of this policy is going to be positive as opposed to what we're experiencing now. Now, the implementation, of course, is not rigid. It's flexible in the sense that I expect the central bank to continue to respond to developments as they unfold.
The portal that they launched obviously created problems. We saw this happen in Lagos, where they literally gathered the central bank.
Yeah, oh yes, that's why I talk about flexibility. When you notice that there's a bottleneck somewhere, you try to also put in place measures.
Yes, but why are we creating this environment for such activities to actually thrive? We've seen Nigerians already reacting to the Naira redesign policy in a very negative way. Even prior to the portal being opened, we saw Nigerians protesting in Edo State. We saw Nigerians protesting in Delta State. We saw Nigerians protesting in Lagos State. There was vandalism. As a matter of fact, in Edo State, there were allegedly 2 people that had already been shot. So this environment was already created as a result of this policy. So are we really putting in proper thought before we roll out these policies out there to Nigerians?
I think it also has more to do with our culture. The central bank had given January 31st. Yes, one could argue that was short, but it was extended to February 10. So the people that are thronging the central bank branches now, okay, you will agree with me that some of them also had these notes with them and refused to go to submit them within that window. So that is what is causing this surge, which is also why the central bank is now extending it to April 10th.
All right, so I would like to also bring in the fact that we have certain states that are sticking to the usage of the old 1,000 and 500 Naira notes. Now I'm throwing this question to our son in the studio with us. So we have Jigawa State, we have Lagos State, we have Kaduna State. All of these states, even Zamfara State, all of them have said we're going to continue to use the 1,000 and 500 Naira notes. And they're citing the Nigerian Constitution, that's 287 subsection 1, which says the decisions of the Supreme Court shall be enforced in any part of the Federation by all authorities and persons and courts with subordinate jurisdiction to that of the Supreme Court. Now, what do you make of this? Because now you have the FCT saying, no, you're not supposed to use this, but then you have other states, and we don't know if there are going to be more states that will join in.
I see anarchy, and in my lifetime, I pray we don't get to this. I would not want to go into the conclusions that you want me to make. I will avoid that. But let me say this, and I say it with all sense of responsibility. We all live by precedents. What constitutes us in terms of our sixth sense, our morals, our whatever makeup are precedents. In the local parlance, you call them traditions. What you do today is going to affect tomorrow. The reason why we are lenient with thieves, the reason why public thievery and corruption is thriving, it is because we did not lynch yesterday's thief. And there is always that reaction that if BC did that yesterday, why should it be an issue with Damaka? Or why should it be Fatima that should be the issue? We had let it go with this, let us go. But you see, the law is meant to regulate not just today,
but tomorrow, because the law is meant to give us a kind of a machine that works effortlessly, less painful, but surely. And that is why they give all of these regulations. I am not one that is going to say because A has done this, B is right to do that. But that's what I think. Except since since Mr. President is disobeying court order, which I think is done, I would now on my own disregard the fact that the power to declare what is a legal tender and what is not is that of the president and not that of the court. The court could make its own declarations, and the implementation of those declarations are for the authorities that are meant to do so. And pointedly, the orders were directed at Mr. President, not to the state governors. So in as much as I can sympathize with the state governors with their own reactions, I do not think that is the right way to go.
All right, we unfortunately we're a bit pressed for time. So Professor Uche, what are your final points before we wrap up the show?
Yeah, my final point is something that is
keep it within 30 seconds.
Oh yes, the president has said that one of the legacies he wants to leave behind is to reduce the influence of money on on politics, and I think that is the right way to go, and that is to me too what has informed this idea of sorting these things all out before the national elections.
All right, thank you very much. Since we're pressed for time, we're going to wrap up the show here. Well, I'd like to thank my guests in the studio, legal practitioner and senior advocate of Nigeria, Dr. Sam Kagbo. Thank you so much for being a part of the show.
Let me make that correction, Sam Kagbo.
Okay, pardon me, Sam Kagbo.
Yeah.
Yes, and we also have here with us economist Professor Uche Uwaleke. Thank you so much for joining us. To our viewers out there, thank you so much for watching. Do not forget to follow us on our social media platforms. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, wherever you look, we're there. Just look up Trust TV News. Well, my name is Chamun Dabeng. Come back again. Let's talk numbers.
This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.